Hey, what's up, everybody? I'd like to welcome you back to the Audio Programmer Podcast, episode 7, and we have a very special guest this morning, Jules Storer, who is the inventor of JUCE, also the creator of Waveform / Traction, and owner of a new company called Prism. And also the creator of Soul. Wow, you know what we need to do if you watch Game of Thrones? How you have like Daenerys Targaryen, breaker of chains.
Don't give me any spoilers. I've not watched the last series yet.
Oh, really? Okay, but you know how they precede Daenerys Targaryen, breaker of
Yeah.
chains, the
Mm-hmm.
unburnt,
Writer of libraries.
We need something like that for you. Creator of JUCE, creator of Soul, owner of Prism.
That works. That works.
So
I'll get it in some big stone tablets.
that's right. So how are things going?
Great. Super busy. Million things going on, but it's all exciting. All
Yeah.
first world problems.
Yeah, so we've talked about doing this show for a little while, getting you on the channel, and so many people have requested you, and I wish I had had an opportunity to actually go out to the community and get community questions, but maybe we could save that for part 2. Great. So I think a good place for us to start is so one thing that I've always been curious about, we have so few audio developers in the world that know how to kind of create a DAW or do that know audio programming as in depth as yourself. And I was curious just about your journey getting into coding. How does one learn how to code kind of pre-internet, dawn of the internet? Can you just tell us a little bit about your journey into coding?
Sure. I mean, I'm very, very old, so I kind of was lucky enough to fall into that little golden era of home computing back in the 80s, where like my first computer was Commodore VIC-20 back in 83 or something, ridiculously long ago. And it was a really great time to be a kid into that kind of thing, because it was all new and exciting. It was geeky, but it was not yet so complicated that you couldn't learn it. Like now, if you're 10 and you want to get into computers, I have no idea where you start. I mean, there's just so much to know. Whereas if you bought a VIC-20 or a Commodore 64 back in the early 80s, it came with a book, a ring-bound book, and that was everything you could ever need to know about that computer. And even a kid could read the book and use the computer and figure it all out.
Wow.
And the only thing you could really do, unless your parents would buy you games, was learn to program. And so there's a whole generation like me of people who, from that time, who fell into programming because it was the thing to do with those toys back then.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of looking that way. Yeah, I can't say I really became a decent programmer until much, much later. It was always just more screwing around when I was a kid.
Nice.
I was into it, and I used to do a lot of programming, but and back then, nobody was a good programmer. It wasn't really big stuff. Like nowadays, if you want to become a good programmer, you go out on the internet, you read books about how to be a good programmer, good practices. You learn seeing lots of other people's code. Back then, you're kind of on your own. You've got a bunch of rules, like here's the basic programming language. But actually, how to do it well, how to write good code, there was no guidelines. So it was all very scrappy, and so was everybody else, and everyone's just kind of figuring it out at that time. And really, until the late 90s, it kind of felt like that. Like, I was writing terrible code until 2000, just because it hadn't become, writing good code hadn't really become a thing until then. I mean, I suppose in some places it obviously had, but it wasn't quite as easy to learn how to do it properly as it is now.
Yeah. And do you think that really kind of refined you as a developer, having to really resort to manuals and not having as many resources online?
I don't know. I mean, I think certainly those years of tinkering around while my brain was still young and malleable and learning to think in a logical programming kind of way was really useful. I mean, everybody has to go through that. Whether I would have been a better programmer sooner if I'd been doing it now and I just had access to all the stuff that everybody has now, I don't know. I don't know about that. I think a lot of people from that era ended up staying as very low-level programmers, the kind of bit twiddling kind of mentality, because that's what all you had back then.
Yeah.
Rather than very abstract, high-level front end, JavaScript programmers who don't really know what's going on under the hood at all nowadays. So there might be a bit of that, and it's good to have the whole stack to know the history. But I mean, I know people half my age who are as good a programmer as I am, and who learned it in about 3 years at university. So
really,
who knows?
show me those people, because I don't see very many of them. They're very hard to find.
Oh, you interviewed Dave Rowland. He's annoyingly good, from going from zero to Dave Rowland.
Oh, Dave Rowland. Oh, Dave Rowland is excellent. Yeah, Dave Rowland.
Yeah.
I thought you meant I thought you meant Rolly Rowland.
He's not quite so good.
Yeah.
He has his skill set.
Yeah.
I don't think he'd claim coding as much. but yeah, people like Dave and like Ed, who works on the JUCE team, is he's about 12 years old and learned it in a weekend.
Yeah.
It's absolutely brilliant. So yeah. It took me a lot longer.
Yeah. And how did you make the journey from somebody that was just kind of tinkering around with it into somebody that was doing this for a living?
Well, doing it for a living was easy because I liked it. So as soon as I left university, I wanted to do this.
Yeah. Did you learn it? Did you study it in university?
Yeah, I was kind of. I did, but I don't think I learned anything useful. I mean, that was the early '90s, and I went to St Andrews, and the course there they taught you to program in a programming language called alleviate, which they'd invented in St Andrews, and I don't think it was used outside that department.
I see.
And they taught you a few the sort of general computer science stuff, but I don't remember coming away with anything actually that I've ever needed since then, other than just the experience of writing some, doing some, programming.
Yeah.
But I only really learned it when I actually had a job and got on with writing real projects and having to make things work well.
Yeah. Do you think that
that's? So in fact, I wouldn't actually.
I was going to ask, do you think that that's really how people learn, by writing their own projects?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Because I would say
I mean.
I feel that way. I felt that I learned the most writing my own projects rather than really looking at tutorials, for instance.
I think there's two things. I think definitely writing your own project, but also having peer review of that.
Yeah.
Which is something I kind of was lacking a bit. I think nowadays you can find people to review your code and really learn fast from someone better than you, telling you what you've done wrong or how it could be improved. Because they'll point out things that you weren't aware of and see patterns. And if you do it on your own, you will learn all that stuff. You'll kind of eventually go, oh, I see. Oh, that would have been better. Or I should have done it like that. But it's much quicker if you just have someone experienced to say, hey, write this bit like this. But definitely having a goal and working towards the goal is how I've always got better at things. And I think that's probably true of most people.
Yeah.
I don't think as many people can just open a book, read it, and then be great at it.
Yeah. And so what was your first job kind of coming out of university? What was your first professional job?
My first job was I had a really annoying job working on hospital databases for a short time, and I got the hell out of that. And I was really lucky that my first job when I moved down to London was at a really cool company called Lightworks, who are actually still going in some form. And they were one of the first video nonlinear editing machines. So this is in like the mid-90s, back when a computer couldn't play video.
Yeah.
which seems kind of strange to imagine that nowadays. So they were building these huge PCs with DSP cards and these massive house brick sized 9 GB hard disks that cost £1,000 each.
Man.
And could store like a couple of minutes of low quality video.
Yeah.
And that was really exciting. And it was I sort of fell in the deep end there and learned a lot from the people around me.
Yeah.
And it was also one of those interesting places where there was a whole group of us who were quite young, started our careers there, and they've all gone off to do really interesting things. Like they've started all these interesting, fascinating companies, some around video, some around sort of media things. And it was a really, really great cohort of people to come out of that yeah.
Wow. And so
that was really.
So what?
On the other hand, it was not lucky because it was kind of that time. What I should probably have been doing is something to do with the internet, which was sort of just kicking off then. So in a way, I kind of missed the .com bubble because I went into the video and media and streaming and side of things.
Yeah.
Rather than the networking side.
Could have been really Jules Storer, the JavaScript guru, rather than the C++ guru.
could have mentioned Facebook, you know. Who knows? But,
yeah. So Lightworks, what did you pick up mainly from there? Was it mainly the coding, how to really kind of start working on bigger projects?
Yeah. A bit of working on bigger projects, but then even then, like a proper company building proper machines, like everyone was still just figuring out stuff that we take for granted now, like version control didn't exist when I kind of joined that company, and they adopted it at CBS or something while I was there. It's stuff that now you just don't even think twice about. Wow. There's still people who are tinkering around. Like C++ was new.
Yeah.
And they were just picking it up, but most people were still writing C++ like C.
Yeah.
So it was interesting to grow through that early period with that bunch of people. Yeah.
And so what happened? How long did you stay at Lightworks for then?
It's all imploded after maybe 2 or 3 years. It wasn't very long. And then I went off and to do some with a partner from there who he had an idea for some sound effects server software. So we went off and built that. And that kind of set me off doing my own company. And although that product actually might still be used in a few places, but it didn't really go anywhere, but it did kind of give me a platform from which I could start building things like Fraction, which was the first thing I did after that that actually became made a living for me. I did on my own.
And what was the inspiration for that? Did you feel that because this is the early 2000s, right?
It was about 2000. I think it was maybe around 2000, 2001, I think.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure enough, but so it was just that I got. Yeah, I mean, I did it because I always played guitar, and I wanted to record some music and do some music making at home on my PC. And I got like a console PC and got, I think, Cubase or something on it. And it was just terrible. The experience was so bad that I was thinking, well, I was looking around for something new to do, and it was like, well, come on, this is bad. I can't. It can't be hard to do something that's better than this.
Yeah.
So I kind of naively had a go.
Yeah.
And somehow it worked out. I mean, the first version of Fraction was really primitive, but I think it was sort of different enough and interesting enough to a small group of people that it did kind of start selling and paying a few bills, and I was like, okay, this is good. I remember I launched it at just the same time as Ableton first came out, and they both sort of had the same visual look, because we'd obviously both written our GUI libraries in a similar way with like flat colors and rounded edges and stuff, which was sort of unusual at the time. And everything looked like Windows 3.1 software.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, that was. From there, it kind of. I quickly started to get serious about it and grow it into a real product.
One thing that I've been curious about is, how does even one learn how to code a DAW? Because you have so many different things that are involved with it. You have the audio graph, you have the loading, the plugins. Yeah. How do you even figure something like that out?
If I was doing it again, I wouldn't do it. I mean, it's just such a difficult thing. And like you say, there's just so many bits to it. Like I can't really think of anything else that's got quite so many moving parts.
Yeah.
That I've ever worked on. And and you know, not only does it just have to do a lot of things and have a lot of functionality, but it has to run on all these different platforms. So the number of testing scenarios is just more than you can really possibly do. And you know, while I was writing it, stuff is changing under your feet. Like when I first wrote Traction, it was for Windows, and then I got it on Mac. But then, like, the plugin formats are changing underneath you, and Mac and Windows are changing underneath you, and then every single plugin back then was a bit random and a bit broken, and they all behaved slightly differently. Yeah. So, like, you had to do all these workarounds for those. All the sound cards were different and broken, and you had buggy sound drivers to deal with. So, if I'd known that, I'd probably have chosen something simpler. But it was when I did it, was probably the last time really realistically write one from scratch like that. I think now it would just take too long to catch up with everybody else. Yeah. When I did it, I didn't get many features into it, but it was kind of enough to be to be catching up with the others. I think now it just the landscape's changed.
Yeah, definitely. And when did you look at Traction and what you were doing in the code base and really say, hey, this could be something that maybe other people could use?
Well, I think internally, I've been doing that for a couple of years anyway. While I was developing it, I was sort of putting little utilities on one side, especially when I started doing it for Mac and PC. So I would okay, well, I need some cross-platform GUI stuff here, and I'm sort of pulling bits of code out, all internally. Yeah. But then Mackie contacted me and were interested in acquiring Traction. Yeah. And I thought, this is good to move on, do something else. But because I'd kind of siloed off all this library code, I thought, well, that's the bit I've been enjoying the most here, is actually working on this library code, the cross-platform things. So what I think I'll do is I'll give them the product, and I'll take the library, something with that on my own. Yeah. So that's what became JUCE. I think I thought of the name like the day before we had to put it in the contract, because we had to make it clear that this wasn't what they've got, and I don't have a name for this. So that's kind of where that came from. Yeah. So once Mackie were doing the DAW, I had a little bit of breathing room to sit back and spend some time working on the library. Yeah. And start turning that into something I could commercialize. So that's kind of where JUCE came from. And it was lucky because if I hadn't just sold Traction, I probably wouldn't have had the time to do this in parallel with some other job. So again, quite a nice lucky turn of events there. Yeah.
And how long did it take you to really make it from just something that was kind of a disparate set of libraries into something that you felt was a product? I mean, what was the mindset there? How did you actually form that into a package?
think it took a couple of years. A bit hazy over the timing there. I think I sold the first one in 2006 or something, but I'd been doing little bits and pieces around then as well, bits of consulting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you say, that's when I sold a copy.
Yeah.
It sort of gradually went up there. But I think if I went back and looked at that code, which I might have in a zip file somewhere, I don't think I'd see. I think I'm kind of embarrassed because it's come on so much since then.
Yeah.
I mean, like all the good practices that I bang on about to other people, going, oh, come on,
yeah,
get your act together. Like I did all this stuff, like in public code, and sold it to people.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any. And it's probably not a line of code in the library now that's been there even half the lifetime of it.
Yeah,
it's churned over so much.
And it's such a challenge developing a framework, isn't it? Because you have to really think of it with the mindset of standing the test of time, because a lot of people are going to be using it, and then something you change could break somebody else's code. And
absolutely, and and there's a balance between, like, you write anything you write, you kind of need to make it specific enough to be useful, but generic enough to be useful to a lot of people. And it's a really subtle thing to be making decisions about, which I think is kind of why I've enjoyed it so much, because it's a different kind of design process to designing a product.
And
again, like you say, because people are they're committing to, they're linking their code to this code, break it or change it, or if you've done your design wrong, it'll impact them. You try and get it right later or change it. So
and
it's a good puzzle.
Yeah, I can imagine. And how long did it take before it started growing to a point where you said, you know what, I need to bring in another developer, or I need more than myself to actually manage this?
Well, it was a long time. I mean, Rolly came along in 2014, so it's been getting on for 10 years at that point. Certainly internally, more than 10 years. So it was really, I was enjoying it, and I was making a living out of it.
Yeah.
But it was like, okay, getting a bit lonely now. So we need to sort of just beef it up and do something a bit more exciting with it. And luckily that's going on. Because I was sort of sniffing around to see if there were other people who might be interested. But Rolly was a really good fit. But, as a sort of a custodian of that product and that community, they've done a really good job.
Yeah.
I say we've done a really good job. But I think it's seen as, Rolly's kind of stewardship of it has been seen as a really positive thing by most people in the industry.
Yeah, definitely. What do you feel that they brought to the table that really kind of added to what you already had in 2014 when you decided to sell it to Rolly? What did you how did they take it from one level to another level for you?
Ambition and money, and people, and also like certainly early on, using it in real products. So being in a situation where you have a team. I mean, I've always kind of used it in traction as the product to test the library. But to actually have another team building a product next to you, at the desks next to you, while we're working on the library for them and working back and forth, is actually really good, really valuable way to do it.
Yeah.
And also just having other people on the JUCE team has been great, because we had some fantastic people over the years. We had Davian and Timur, we had Ed, and a bunch of other people who've come and gone, but they've all been really good, and I've learned a lot from them.
Yeah, they're all legends in their own way, aren't they? And it's interesting that you have Lightworks where you had a group and they've kind of gone off and they've done their own thing and they've gone and done things. And now, in a sense, you've had that again with JUCE and the developers that have kind of come through there.
Yeah.
Teamer is now.
Yeah, that's true.
Like with Teamer is so recognized within the community, as a real advocate for audio and C++. I mean, most people, he's really brought it into the wider C++ community, hasn't he? He has several talks that are iconic, and Fabian, of course, is a legend. And then Ed and Tom.
Yeah, and and the guys who, because Tom and Ed, who are pretty much doing 90% of JUCE stuff these days, while I'm kind of often doing soul and other things. Are like just killing it. They're doing. I see the code they're writing, and it's like, that's like my code. It's great. So I guess that's. Lightworks and Rolling both had that sort of this strange thing of it being a sort of exciting place where there was a lot of really tons of people coming together. And making an impact afterwards. Yeah, they both had that same kind of feel about them.
Yeah, absolutely. And so JUCE, where in terms of where you see it now, it's the largest framework that most people are using. I mean, most people that are using anything else are either doing it out of pure stubbornness or because they work for a company and that company has their own kind of internal framework. And what do you see as the future of JUCE or the future of audio development? Do you think that people are going to be writing C++ code in 10 years to do audio development, or do you think there will be something else?
It's a really interesting question, that, isn't it? I definitely think people are going to be writing C++ code in 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
I doubt if they're going to be writing it in 15.
Yeah.
Some people will. But it does feel like the reason people are sticking with C++ really is the real-time problem, like having to write real-time code. I honestly think if that wasn't an issue, then audio would have moved on from C++ long ago, because it feels like the people who are learning it, C++ that is, are doing so just because they have to.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not really interested in it as a language. They're not. They struggle with the tools, and I think it feels like a lot of, certainly the newcomers, would rather be using web tech and JavaScript and other languages, of which there's now so many different choices.
What do you think is the biggest?
But they kind of fall into C++.
I was going to ask, what do you think is the biggest challenge in terms of C++? Because I mean, now you don't have to deal with nearly the same amount of problems that you used to have to deal with in terms of memory management, because you can use a unique pointer or a shared pointer for most of the time. So what makes it so challenging for people?
Because you say that, but you say you just use shared pointers, and if you're writing C++ with all the best practices, all the new stuff, which is really quite a recent thing, it's really only since C++ 11 that we've all been thinking this way.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's great, and I love it. I use it for anything, but then I've spent 25 years learning it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're learning it from scratch, then learning what all those good practices are, it's non-trivial. Whereas with a lot of the other languages, you have less to learn, you have less to go wrong, less to shoot yourself in the foot with. There are newer languages like Rust coming along, which it's just, I don't know if it's overhyped, but it does feel like they're trying to fix some of those mistakes. Really, this is kind of where I've been coming at it with Soul, is I think if we try to make it easier and safer to write audio code just by picking another language, it's probably not going to get very far. Because if we just say, okay, we're all going to write the same, we're going to do what we were doing, but we're going to do it in Rust.
Mm-hmm.
you kind of it's still going to be really hard, and it's still going to be using the same architectures that we're using now. So I think it would be hard to make everybody change just for a new language or just to make it easier for the beginners. And I think that's kind of where I've been trying to steer things with Soul, is that like we kind of do need to fix all those things, but we need a better excuse to fix them. So not only do we want to make it easier and safer for everyone and quicker for like as experts to write up like the things we're building, but we kind of need to do it with the technology that not only makes it easier but also makes it better, like better than you could do with C++.
Yeah.
And the other bottleneck or the other limitation of C++ is that you're going to be running it on your CPU. And no matter what language you use, actually deploying the code to better, lower latency, more dedicated semiconductors that could do the audio processing better is going to be super hard unless, and that's kind of what Soul was trying to solve. So it's like, okay, Soul can make it impossible to shoot yourself in the foot like C++ can, but we can also say, hey, that's fine, but you're also going to get better performance, you're also going to get better latency than you could possibly do, even as a C++ guru, because of the architectures that you're stuck with. So that's kind of that's the rationale for our kind of future shot here. And I do think some C++ will stick around for a while. But something, either Soul or something very like Soul with a different name, has got to kind of, there's a slot, there's a hole with that shape into which something will fall. The slot, and we'll kind of, I think that will be the future of it. But whether that's in 6 months or 20 years depends on many things.
And you brought up Rust, which people have been really kind of championing as the audio language of the future that will be able to do solve some of the problems that C++ has. What are your thoughts on Rust?
But the only problems it solves that C++ can't solve are ease of use, really. It doesn't really get you any further. It just makes it different to write the same thing. I mean, it's great. It's a nice language. I like it a lot. I wish it had been around 20 years ago and we could have done all this in Rust. I mean, might have been a bit nicer. But it does the same job. It just does it a bit nicer. It's not really a new paradigm. It's just a better version of the same thing.
And do you, in terms of, so you have Soul, which I think of as kind of OpenGL for sound, more or less. Do you feel, so one concern that I've heard from the community is that is sound enough of a priority in terms of the big, because we look at OpenGL for graphics, you have the video game market that's so huge. In terms of sound, is the market there and to really justify, okay, we need to actually have a dedicated sound language. We need to have a dedicated maybe chip that this is done, that this work is done on. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the thing is, we already have dedicated chips and everything that do sound. Most, your phone's got one. It's just that you can't run your own code on it.
I see.
So, people are already making silicon that does a really great job of processing audio and does it better than the CPU.
It's
just not, you just don't have access to that. So we're kind of trying to just build something which will kind of help the transition to that model. And it's nice with Soul that there are two sides to it. There's the kind of efficiency and latency side, which does involve like better hardware and better platforms. But there is also this like being really nice and easy to write and be able to live code it and recompile things as you're testing them and that kind of thing. So we're kind of starting with that, and finding that's actually a use case in itself, which is terrific. But being very careful that once we've got people writing soul because it's fun and easy, that's all. That the architecture we've designed for it will also magically let you run it on these future chips. So it's a chicken and egg problem we're dealing with, but actually it's okay because we've kind of we've got half an egg and half a chicken, and we're kind of working our way up to a chicken and egg. Yeah. So I think we can get there. I think we can get like enough people interested in order to make it interesting for devices to support it, and then as soon as devices support it, then people are going to start using it. So it's an interesting one. I think we can hit a critical mass with it, one way or another.
Yeah,
but we're pushing on both the chicken and the egg. So we're doing devices and we're doing cool ways of using the software.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it is a tough one because if you don't have the possibility in place, then people can't imagine future possibilities, can they? So
that's right. Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see once the possibility to do more things with audio, then people will be able to use it in more creative ways. But it's hard to imagine what that future would look like.
Yeah. So I think we've got the right strategy with it. It's going really well. It's certainly a lot of fun, and
And what in your mind, what do you, let's say that Soul sets the world on fire and everybody wants to write audio apps and DSP with Soul. What does that world look like to you? What possibilities does that offer for the audio development community?
I think the bit that's really interesting is it becomes a lot more like the web. And the thing I've been saying about plugins is that we've all got this plugin mentality. We're all so used to having plugins. You have doors, you have plugins in the doors, and then you have programs, patches that run on the plugins. It feels like once it all becomes scriptable and isn't native code anymore, you can, then all the lines get a bit blurred. Like I'm working on the design for what we're calling a soul patch. Love that name. Right now, so a soul patch is like a plugin. But it's just a bundle of soul code and a header file, a manifest file, and some JavaScript or some other scripted UI code. But that patch could run on the web. It could run, or it could be natively compiled with a JIT compiler in a door, or it could be deployed. The DSP could be sent off to an external device to run at low latency and super fast. But because it kind of can exist on the web and not need to be tied to a particular platform, and because it's self-contained, it kind of I can see it becoming a situation that you'd have, rather than a set of sounds for a plugin, you just have a set of soul patches. Each patch may have the same synthesizer engine in it, or it may not. But the user doesn't really care. Just like the user goes to a website and they look at this website and they don't know what the JavaScript backend is, under the hood, or they don't care like whether it's using WordPress or something. It's just a website. And I think these will become just like these soul patches are just like a patch. And here's a patch I've done, and it's got some synth engine in it, probably of some kind, which may borrow bits from other things. But you don't care. It's just like that's behind the scenes. And I think that will sort of dilute the plugin, the meaning of what a plugin is, to the point where it's like it's a sound, it's a patch, and here's the URL for that patch. And I can type that URL into my door, and the door will just fetch a few small script files put down from that website and show it as the plugin and run it efficiently. But actually what's going on under the hood and what the engine is, don't really care. That's a sound designer. And so I see that as a bit of a shift.
That sounds really interesting. So it almost sounds like there's one part that I feel that I'm hearing that maybe audio apps can become kind of like the way that Electron is, where it's like an app that sits on your desktop, but it's actually like a web app, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that certainly with Soul Patches, I'm working on how the GUI is going to be done at the moment.
Yeah.
I think we'll certainly have a few options. There'll be like no GUI. There'll be a very declarative GUI that just says like, here's a panel with some controls and here's what, some colors for it.
Yeah.
And then there'll be a fully JavaScript, HTML, CSS, web technology GUI that could do all kinds of whizzy 3D things inside an engine like the Chromium engine or Electron. Or it's all the same web tech under the hood in those things.
Yeah.
And I kind of see that as the way it's going to end up being done, because that's how everybody, that's where the commodity user interface design is all going on. It's all web and CSS. So the idea that we won't be doing plugins or whatever we call them with web front ends is kind of of course we will.
Yeah.
Of course we will. And so that's what we're trying to unlock at the moment.
And how far away do you think that we are from having, let's say, Ableton or Traction in a web browser? Do you think that we're still significantly far away from that?
Not that far, because there's been the new stuff that's been happening with being able to build with LLVM or WebAssembly. I mean, WebAssembly is the big change here. Such that I think, certainly thinking about Traction, it doesn't feel like it would be impossible to refactor that to be compiled as WebAssembly. I can't speak for the other doors, obviously they're all very different.
Yeah.
But you'd have to cut out a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But essentially the sort of engine that's running inside should run in a web browser. But then you lose the things you lose there are file system and local storage, and so there's a lot of whether you'd actually want to take a normal DAW and run it in the browser is the real question, not whether you can. It's like you would need to redesign it.
Yeah.
To just to have a different model, really.
Yeah.
But something like the Traction engine that we kind of that we pulled out as like the headless thing that runs under the hood, that might work well in the browser.
Yeah.
And one of the things I really want to see happen with Soul is that, like, Soul code. I mean, we already have like a Soul to WebAssembly compiler that we build it on the fly and run it in the browser.
Yeah.
But WebAssembly is never going to be as fast as running something natively. So it'd be really cool to see browser support for Soul, where it can actually run Soul code faster than the WebAssembly intermediate coming out.
Yeah.
And that way you could get like proper audio performance in a browser-based DAW.
Yeah.
So there's not enough hours in the day, but that's definitely something we want to dig around in the coming years.
Yeah, because one of the first things I think when I think of the possibility of a DAW in a web browser, kind of from my naive perspective, is okay. So where would the plugins sit? Where would they reside?
Well, exactly. And native plugins, there's just no chance. They're not going to.
Yeah. So it feels like if you, as you described, kind of the workflow and the onboarding with a URL, and you just put the URL in and it pulls up the patch. That sounds like that.
Yeah. So I mean, that's all these pieces kind of slot into place. And I think we've got years of work to get there.
Yeah.
Soul's a huge project.
Yeah.
But I think definitely if we don't do this, someone else will.
Yeah.
Because it makes too much sense.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'll be sad if what ends up happening is that Soul doesn't become the thing, and if something becomes takes this role, which is kind of based on WebAssembly. It feels like that would be. It feels like that could happen, but it'll be a kind of a lesser version of what it could have been. there's a lot of design. The design decisions to actually do this as its own language and as its own intermediate representation and all the low-level compiler stuff. It feels like you could do this. You could take the same, try and do the same thing more lazily with WebAssembly and existing tech, and it wouldn't be as good.
Yeah.
So I'll be if someone else does a better job of us than we have with Soul.
Yeah.
Great, but it feels like it could happen that someone does a lesser product that takes this role. So that's what we're going for it. We're gonna win this.
Yeah. And how far do you think that we are away from the ability for developers to actually take Soul and actually make it into a product that you can sell? How far away are we from that? And what would need to happen in order for that to be possible?
We're very close to being able to write something in Soul, package it up in a plugin, and distribute that as a plugin, which is it's the intermediate step. I mean, you don't really want to be doing that. What you really want are the doors to load the Soul code directly.
Yeah,
but we can build a plugin that has the JIT engine in it, so you can be live coding and testing your stuff, and then just put those scripts alongside a little native plugin wrapper that turns it into a VST or a AU or whatever you want.
Yeah,
and loads it and does what the door would eventually do. So that's really close. I mean, pretty the next exciting thing that is going to be coming out is Soul patch support in Action Waveform, which should be out for too long. I've got it working. We've got prototypes working. We just need to polish that off, and then we'll have a little version of that people can start tinkering with.
Wow.
And then we'll release the Soul patch format with converters that can load it as a JUCE audio processor or a JUCE audio plugin, and then wrappers for that. So this is all really close.
Yeah. Wow.
This is all really good fun. Yeah. This is really cool to play with. But it's only a stepping stone along the way. Eventually you want to cut out the middleman here, cut out all these DLLs and plugins and stuff in the middle, and just go to like raw Soul straight into a door. Yeah. Build the whole doors audio graph out of Soul, compile it all together. I mean, that's years off because it involves the door engines, something like that. But there's a lot of fun stuff around the corner on the way there.
Amazing.
And then hopefully that what you're writing, what you'd be writing for these for the short-term stuff, will then just magically work down the road much better when there's proper support in the doors for it.
Wow. And in terms of licensing, have you thought about licensing? Will this just be something that's open source that everybody's going to be able to get for free?
Yeah, it's going to have to be. I mean, the only business model that would work for something like this is making it completely frictionless for the developers.
Yeah,
like the people actually writing this code, and it's got to be just completely permissively licensed. The back end stuff that actually renders it. That's where, if we, any licensing we do get around that end, and like hardware that can accelerate it, that's nobody minds paying for licensing. The kind of pretty hardcore technology that stuff needs to contain to actually run this stuff. So, yeah.
And do you think that in terms, will there be a future where JUCE will have some type of Soul capability integrated into it, or are those two things going to be always separate? Or
I mean, they're going to be separate because Soul is going to be running quite happily in WebAssembly, in the cloud, in JavaScript, not really going near native code at all. So they're technically separate, but all the stuff I'm writing for it right now is JUCE based, because why wouldn't it be? And it's a great way to do this intermediate integration into other bigger products. But yeah, I mean, it'd be awesome to put as much into JUCE as we can, whilst also making it very dependency free for people who don't use JUCE, to be able to use it without any hassle and integrate it into projects that are weird shapes and weird processes and things. So this is all design decisions that
Yeah.
Yeah,
And how do you do that currently? So is Soul almost like a module inside Juice? Or?
Yeah, it's literally a module at the moment. I mean, it's several modules. So we've got some modules that have no dependencies on anything. Do the core compiling and stuff, and then we have some modules that use JUCE to expose the Soul code as a JUCE audio processor, which means we can, that's how like integrating into something like waveform works, because it's just class C++ class that it already knows about, so it just loads that and it runs. And a bunch of like utility modules around it.
Wow.
Yeah, it's all module based.
Wow, amazing. Let's see what else. So you've recently purchased a company called Prism.
Yeah, we did. That was fun and random.
Yeah.
But that's with the traction. We've joined up with Prism Sound, which I mean, you say new. I mean, they've been around for much longer than us. I think Prism's about 30 years old, and they build amazing DACs that are used in all the big studios. Always have been, like, everything recorded at Abbey Road, legendary places, is all done on Prism equipment.
Wow.
And I'm a software guy, not a hardware guy.
Yeah.
So for me, this is a slightly strange world to be coming into contact with. But the other guys, like Woody, who is the other main partner in Traction, he comes from like Mackie and hardware background, so he kicked this whole thing off with those guys, and that's going to be a lot of fun. And bringing together like our DAW with like their sort of Traction is a very kind of it's not used in many high-end studios. It's more a low-end bedroom musicians, kind of guitarist indie band sort of level DAW, to kind of team that up with this ultra high-end audio hardware. I think we're going to have a lot of fun with that.
Nice.
Yeah.
And was the motivation to, I don't know if this is a question you can really answer or not, but was the motivation to purchase that really driven by the development of Soul and what Soul can offer for the future?
It's a bit early to say much, but definitely there's some really interesting stuff we can do there in the future. Having our own hardware platform to play with as I'd love to go to that more in some future.
Great.
Chat, but maybe not now.
Get the ultra exclusive scoop.
It's not that it's secret. I just don't like announcing things before I'm confident they'll happen.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, there's a lot of really interesting alleyways we can get down there. Yeah.
Great. I think this is a good place for us to maybe wrap things up.
Cool.
Is there anything else that I've left out or that we should mention? Maybe the website. So if you'd like to experiment with Soul, you can actually experiment with the code now. You can check it out.
Soul.dev.
Yeah, soul.dev. And also Jules is going to be doing a keynote, as he does every year, at the Audio Developer Conference as well.
Yeah, I haven't got a subject yet. I'm starting to panic a little bit.
Yeah.
Most years I kind of know what I'm going to talk about because it's something I'm working on, but this year I'm not sure. So it's going to be great. Whatever it is, I'll come up with something amazing.
It's looking very promising. Yeah, absolutely. So to get ADC tickets, you can check out JUCE, that's JUCE.com/ADC. For more information. Great. So I think it's a good place for us to wrap this up. Thanks a lot for your time, Jules. And
always lovely to chat, Josh.
Yeah, and what we'll do is maybe a part 2 down the line that'll be more kind of community questions. I'm sure there'll be loads. It'd be great to get some more technical questions because I'm sure that people will have technical questions that I can't think of in my mind. Yeah.
Bring the code and I'll fix it.
Yeah. Great stuff.
Awesome.
Great.
Well, thanks very much. It's really nice. And you're doing some awesome things with your channel. So it's great. Really, really happy to be on.
I really appreciate it.